The binary sunset is the most iconic image in Star Wars. It's also a slow execution. Today we're breaking down exactly why a week on Tatooine wouldn't just be hard, it would be quietly, inevitably fatal, and we're starting with the thing that kills you before you even realize anything is wrong. Twin suns and severe dehydration. Here's the thing about Tatooine's twin suns. Everyone sees that shot of Luke staring into the horizon and thinks it looks beautiful. And it is beautiful. It's also 55 degrees Celsius of surface temperature bearing down on you with nowhere to hide, and solar irradiance pushing past 1,500 watts per square meter. That's not a desert, that's a slow oven with a gorgeous view. The biology is where it gets relentless. A 70-kilo human sweats roughly 2.5 liters per hour even in shade. Not exerting yourself, just existing. Your total body water sits around 42 liters. Run the numbers and your reserves are gone in under 17 hours. You don't even make it through the first full day. But here's the kicker. The visible symptoms come way too late to save you. You feel thirsty, maybe a little foggy, nothing alarming. Meanwhile, your kidneys are already starting to fail. By the time you hit 10% fluid loss, the damage is irreversible. You're not dramatically collapsing in the sand. Your organs are just quietly shutting down while you squint at the horizon. Tatooine doesn't give you a break either. Two suns reaching their zenith at separate times means 2 daily temperature spikes. There is no cooler window where your body gets to recover. The atmospheric humidity rarely exceeds 12%, which sounds like a dry statistic right up until you realize what it does to your mucous membranes. Your nose, throat, and lungs are desiccating at the cellular level the entire time. Tatooine doesn't need monsters. The two suns sitting there looking gorgeous are doing more damage than anything else on the planet, and they haven't even tried. That's what the environment alone does. Now imagine you're actually expected to work in it. Moisture, farm labor, and heat exhaustion. Here's the thing about moisture farmers. They actually figured it out. They looked at one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy and said, no, we can work with this, and then built an entire civilization on the back of that answer, which makes it so much more brutal that the job itself is slowly killing them anyway. Evaporator maintenance runs 6.5 hours a day outdoors in temperatures exceeding 48 degrees Celsius. Your heart rate averages 145 BPM throughout the entire shift. That's not a sprint, that's not a crisis moment, that's just Tuesday. Your core body temperature hits 40.5 degrees within 90 minutes of routine calibration work, and 78% of first-time farmhands exposed beyond 2 hours develop heat stroke. Not feel a bit rough, heat stroke, the kind with hallucinations and muscle rigidity and someone dragging you inside. You lose 1.8 liters of sweat every single hour, and that's before any predator, raider, or criminal organization has even glanced in your direction. But here's the kicker. The farmers know this. They've adapted. The layered robes you see on every moisture farmer in the outer rim aren't fashion, they're engineering. The weave creates micro air pockets that cut heat absorption by 33% compared to modern desert military gear. Turns out, no. All that, every layer, every carefully designed piece of survival clothing buys you 47 extra minutes before heat exhaustion sets in anyway. And after all that, after surviving the labor, after surviving the heat, you go to drink what you just spent 6 hours protecting. Evaporators don't produce clean water. They condense trace atmospheric humidity into brackish slurry that still needs further purification before it's safe to swallow. The resource you're slowly dying to collect is barely drinkable when you get it. Civilization's foothold on Tatooine is a medical emergency with an irrigation system attached. That's the honest description. The environment will kill you passively. The work kills you actively. And if somehow you're still standing after both of those, the planet has other ideas. Because the Tusken Raiders have been watching your farm this entire time. Tusken Raiders. Everyone's first instinct on Tatooine is to head for the moisture farm, get indoors, get close to a water source, stay near other people. Logical, reasonable. Also, statistically, exactly where you need to not be. 92% of human casualties from Tusken engagements happen within 500 meters of moisture farms, not out in the open desert, not during some ill-advised solo trek between settlements, right outside your front door. The place you retreated to for safety is the place they've been watching. They know where the water is. They've always known. Here's where it gets weird though. Tuskens aren't the random chaotic savages most people write them off as. They're tactically patient. They don't hunt during brutal midday heat because their infrared vision saturates above 50 degrees C, meaning full sun hours are actually their blind window. So they wait. They operate during thermal twilight, that 90-minute window in the early morning and late afternoon when temperatures drop just enough for outdoor work to feel survivable. The brief moment of relief you've been waiting for all day, the window where you actually venture outside to check your equipment, is precisely when you're most exposed. You step outside thinking the worst is over. They've been waiting for exactly that. The Gatterfee sticks they carry are forged from carbon ironwood at a density of 1.2 G Kente 3. At full swing, that's 4,200 newtons of impact force and a 70% probability of skull fracture from a single blow. You won't see it coming either, because the banthas they ride during charges vocalize at 180 decibels. Within 15 meters, that causes temporary deafness and serious disorientation. By the time you register the sound, your ability to react to it is already gone, and the hook on the Gader Faiz isn't decorative. It allows a raider to snag a victim and drag them through open sand at 8 km/h. Sand ground lacerations cause exsanguination within 12 minutes. That's not a combat death, that's a slow one, so not random, not savage, methodical, patient, and operating on a schedule that directly exploits the only outdoor window you have, which is, not ideal. The Tuskens are just the threat you can see coming. The Jawas are a different problem entirely, because they don't want to hurt you, they just want your stuff, and they don't particularly care what happens to you in the process. Jawa scavengers and droid scrap traps, you survived the Tusken Raiders. Barely. You're battered, you're dehydrated, and you're quietly congratulating yourself on still being alive. And then a net hits you from somewhere you couldn't see, thrown by something roughly the size of a 10-year-old, and your heart literally stops. That's the Jawas. Small, hooded. They make little squeaking noises. They will absolutely end you, and they won't even mean to. Here's the thing about Jawa capture nets. They're ion charged, designed to stun and immobilize droids by disrupting their electronic systems. The problem is that ion weaponry built for machines does not politely stop at the organic bystander standing next to the machine. The electrical discharge that scrambles a droid's motivator circuits will send a human into full-body convulsions. The Jawas aren't trying to kill you, they're just trying to stop a droid running off. The fact that you're attached to the situation is basically a rounding error to them, but let's say you survive the net. Lucky you. The Sandcrawler interior is an industrial-scale metal box rolling across a desert planet with 2 suns. The ambient heat combined with coolant leaks from dozens of damaged droids creates conditions that would drop an unprepared person fast. And while you're lying on the floor of a rolling metal oven, you'll notice the sheer number of malfunctioning droids packed in around you. The average Sandcrawler is a traveling scrap heap that occasionally moves under its own power. Some of those droids still have partial systems active, not fully operational, just enough to periodically make terrible decisions. Getting captured doesn't end the danger, it just introduces a new category of danger, where a droid with a functional weapon arm decides you're a hostile target on a bumpy stretch of road. Then there's the unstable hardware. Jawas strip droids for parts aggressively, pulling power cells under load to maximize yield. Failing power cells don't fail quietly. An overloading droid power core can discharge violently, and the Jawas have developed a rough understanding of where to stand when that happens. You, as an unplanned human passenger, are not part of those calculations. This is why moisture farmers don't chase the Sandcrawler when it rolls off with their droids. The good news is Jawas have no actual interest in you as a person. The bad news is that distinction means nothing when you're incidental collateral to a business transaction that's been going wrong since before you arrived. Compared to the Jawas, at least most of Tatooine's threats have the decency to know you exist. The Krayt Dragon doesn't share that limitation. Krayt Dragons. Here's the thing about every threat on Tatooine we've covered so far. The heat, the sand, the raiders, the Jawas. All of those in some universe where you make the exact right calls every single time are survivable. You could theoretically outlast them. The Krayt Dragon is not that. A full-grown Great Krayt measures 107 meters in length. To put that in perspective, that's longer than an American football field, end zones included. Its bite force clocks in at 107,000 newtons, which is enough to crush a bantha whole. A bantha. You are not a bantha. You are a soft, largely water-based creature that a Krayt Dragon would register as a palate cleanser between real meals. But here's where it gets genuinely terrifying. You will never see it coming. The Krayt has infrared sensing pits that detect body heat through 3 meters of sand. 3 meters. It reads you through the ground before you've taken your next step. From the moment your heat signature registers, you have approximately 0.8 seconds before the attack lands. Your brain's reaction time to a stimulus you can already see is around 0.25 seconds. This creature attacks from beneath solid ground. You are not reacting to this. Nobody is reacting to this. That 0.8 second window is not a warning, it's just the amount of time the Krayt takes to finish the motion. And if it catches you, which it will, the situation becomes considerably worse. The venom-secreting ducts running through its serrated teeth don't kill you. That's deliberate. The toxins induce slow paralysis, enough to stop you from fighting or running, not enough to stop you from being fully conscious. Its stomach acid runs at a pH of 0.8, aggressive enough to dissolve human bone in about 9 minutes. The digestion process itself takes up to 14 days. 14 days. Conscious. I don't know what to tell you. Sustaining that pearl-producing organ in its throat requires 200 kilograms of meat daily. That is a biological demand that makes the crate a constant active predator, not an occasional hazard. It is not sleeping this off between seasons. It is always hunting, and within 3 kilometers of the Yunlin Waste cave systems, the ambush probability inside those tunnels exceeds 89%. Those caves that look like shelter, that's exactly where it wants you to go. The Sarlacc pit at least stays in one place. The Sarlacc pit. Everything before this point you could at least argue your way out of. The Twin Suns, stay hydrated, stay covered. Tusken Raiders, stay off their land. Crate Dragons, stay out of the caves. There's a version of events where luck and preparation buy you another day on Tatooine. The Sarlacc ends that conversation. This isn't a predator, it's a sentence. And the difference matters, because a predator can be outrun, outsmarted, or killed. The Great Pit of Carkoon is a biological execution chamber that has been sitting in the Dune Sea for longer than most civilizations have existed, and it has never once needed to hurry. Here's where it gets weird. The pit itself is ringed with sloped walls lined with inward curving spines. Before a single tentacle engages, the geometry alone makes escape physically impossible for a human. You're not climbing out. The structure doesn't allow it, and the Sarlacc knows this. In whatever way a creature with no visible brain can be said to know anything, if you somehow stay composed enough to attempt to climb, the tentacles handle the rest. Multiple limbs lock onto you simultaneously and drag you downward with the kind of patience that only comes from being centuries old and having nowhere to be. Mechanical, indifferent, completely unbothered by your struggling. The Sarlacc has been doing this for millennia. You are not its first problem, but here's the kicker. Once you're inside, the digestion begins, and it is deliberately slow. According to Star Wars canon, the Sarlacc digests its prey alive over the course of 1,000 years. That's not a metaphor or a sci-fi exaggeration, that's the biological design as established in the expanded universe. The creature's digestive system keeps victims in a state of sustained consciousness throughout the process. The Sarlacc doesn't eat you, it keeps you, which is, not ideal. The tentacles aren't just for capture either. They serve as sensory organs, detecting movement and vibration in the surrounding sand. The moment anything living gets close enough to the pit, the Sarlacc is already aware of it. You're not approaching the Sarlacc, it's already tracking you. The detail most people miss is that Boba Fett surviving the Sarlacc in the Legends continuity required a full set of Mandalorian armor, a thermal detonator used from the inside, and years of recovery. That's the baseline cost of escape. Most people going into that pit are wearing robes and sandals. If you somehow walk away from the Sarlacc, don't celebrate yet, because the creatures that will find you next are smaller, faster, and they travel in the hundreds. Womp rats and sandbat swarms. Here's the thing about womp rats. They sound almost cute after a Sarlacc. A big desert rat. Sure, fine. Luke used to bullseye them in his T-16, which means there's something farm kids shoot for fun on the weekend. How bad could they be? Turns out, pretty bad. Unpleasantly, embarrassingly bad for something with a name like Womp Rat. Womp rats aren't small. They grow up to 2 meters in length, which is taller than most humans and considerably more aggressive than the name suggests. They travel in packs, and they are not docile about it. These things are predators in a biome that has basically no mercy built into it anywhere, and they behave accordingly. The fact that teenage Luke Skywalker hunted them recreationally doesn't make them less dangerous. It makes Luke specifically more terrifying, which is a whole separate conversation. What it tells you about womp rats is that they were common enough, aggressive enough, and large enough to be worth hunting on purpose. So surviving one encounter doesn't mean much, because there are always more of them. The sandbats are a different problem entirely. Where womp rats are a ground level threat you can at least see coming, sandbats operate in swarms, and they find you before you find them. They navigate Tatooine's cave systems and rocky terrain in large groups, and in the dark, that's a serious issue. You're not dealing with one creature making a decision. You're dealing with a coordinated mass of them that don't require you to be particularly unlucky to stumble into. Both species are most active during the temperature drops that come with dusk. The surface cools, the light changes, and everything that spent the daylight hours waiting underground or in the shade starts moving. That exact window, the one where you slow down and feel like you've survived another Tatooine day, is the precise moment predator activity spikes. The brief relief isn't a gift, it's a behavioral trigger built into most of the things that want to eat you. And here's what that actually means practically. You've navigated the heat, the UV radiation, the sandstorms, and you've made it to dusk. You're tired. Your guard is down, and that's the moment Tatooine decides to throw womp rats and sandbats at you simultaneously, because the planet has genuinely no interest in fairness. There is something deeply upsetting about a world where the end of the hard part is also the beginning of the dangerous part. If the sandstorms sounded like the worst Tatooine could throw at you, here's some bad news. Sandstorms and glass-searing winds. Everything else on Tatooine wants to kill you, but at least it has to find you first. The sandstorm doesn't need to find you, it just arrives. Class last 4 storms hit 110 km/h winds, carrying 0.3 meter silica particles. And here's what that means in practical terms. Your skin is gone in 4 minutes. Not scratched, not irritated, abraded down to the dermis layer, which is the layer that's supposed to stay on the inside. Standard moisture farm canvas, the stuff the Lars family trusted their lives to, shreds completely in 11 minutes. So you have a 7-minute window between no skin and no shelter. That's the math Tatooine is working with, but the abrasion isn't even the centerpiece. That would be the glass rain. Quartz particles accelerated past 90 km/h hit temperatures of 1,650 degrees Celsius from friction alone. They melt mid-air, then they hit you. On contact with clothing, they fuse at the point of impact. On contact with exposed skin, they adhere. You don't brush glass rain off. It's not a metaphor. The storm is literally laminating you in silicate glass while simultaneously removing your outer skin layer, which is, you know, not ideal. The atmosphere doesn't spare you either. Barometric pressure drops 32% during a storm, pulling available oxygen down to 12%. That's the physiological equivalent of standing at 8,000 meters altitude. Most people start losing fine motor control above 7,500 meters. You are now experiencing that while being sandblasted, while glass is fusing to your clothes with visibility below half a meter. Good luck picking a direction. Here's where it gets genuinely absurd. Say you find shelter, say you get inside, close the door, and feel like you've made it. The triboelectric charging from all those silica collisions has been building 200,000 volt static discharges in the air around you throughout the storm. Those discharges jump 5 meters. Every metal object in range, your tools, your evaporator hardware, your speeder's ignition frame, the door handle you just grabbed to pull yourself inside, all of it becomes a live electrocution hazard for the entire duration of the storm. You survived the abrasion, you found shelter. The door handle is trying to kill you now. Cool, add that to the list. And storms last 14 hours on average. The cruelest part is the warning system. Barometric pressure changes trigger migraines in 88% of humans about 30 minutes before a storm hits. So Tatooine gives you a heads up. The heads up is a headache. The sentence that follows that headache is 14 hours of complete blindness in glass temperature sand with 200,000 volt static discharges and 0 oxygen, and the only shelter available has metal handles. You get exactly enough warning to understand what's coming. Not enough to do anything about it. At least the storm is impersonal. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't have a bounty on your head. That changes considerably once you make it into Mos Eisley, because Jabba the Hutt has spent decades building an organization whose entire operational model is making sure people like you don't survive the week. Jabba the Hutt's criminal underworld. Let's say you made it this far. You survived the Twin Suns, outran a Tusken raid, avoided the Sarlacc, and somehow found a settlement willing to let you in. Congratulations. You've made it to the part where someone with a small army of enforcers and a monopoly on everything decides whether you live or die. Jabba the Hutt doesn't just control crime on Tatooine, he controls the planet. His network runs through Mos Eisley, Mos Espa, and every cantina and backroom operation in between. Bounty hunters, smugglers, slavers, and corrupt officials all answer to him. It's not an organization, it's an ecosystem, and you're at the bottom of it. But you weren't planning to get involved in any of that, so that's fine. Except here's the thing about Jabba's territory. He controls the water. Tatooine's moisture farming is the backbone of survival for anyone outside the major settlements. Farms that don't play by Jabba's rules don't get protection, and on a desert planet with Tusken raiders and open criminal territory, protection isn't optional. Jabba never has to look at you or know your name. He adjusts the terms and the desert does the rest. Every survival strategy the planet forced you to develop gets neutralized by one organization sitting on top of all of them. And if the passive approach doesn't work, the active approach is worse. Slave collars are a documented feature of Jabba's operation. We see them on screen. They're not a deterrent, they're a leash, and someone else holds the other end at all times. Designed to look like jewelry, which is, you know, not ideal. Then there's the Sarlacc, Jabba's preferred execution method for people who disappoint him, demonstrated publicly at the Great Pit of Carkoon. The Sarlacc digests its victims over thousands of years, confirmed by C-3PO on the sail barge before everything goes sideways. Jabba didn't build it, he just found it, put a stage next to it, and started treating it like company policy. The detail that captures exactly what Jabba represents is his sail barge, the Katana. Hundreds of feet of personal luxury, armed and climate controlled, floating over a desert that's killing everyone beneath it. Cool air, food, entertainment, while the moisture farmers below are one bad harvest away from nothing. The most powerful entity on Tatooine isn't suffering the planet's conditions. He's profiting from them. Everything that makes Tatooine lethal has a man at the center of it who benefits from keeping things exactly as they are. Not out of malice, out of preference. He just likes it that way. That's the planet, not a place where survival is difficult. A place where survival is difficult by design. design and actively worsened by the one at the top. You wouldn't last a week, and now you know exactly why. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.